Hello, I'm Reg Watson, Tasmanian historian and author. I've put a few thoughts together about where Australia is going at the moment. Something has gone wrong with Australia. Indeed, the whole Western world. We seem to have lost our way. We all feel it and many people say it. There is great confusion, disunity and a vacuum in direction. Our leaders are insipid and tossed around by prevailing political and social whims. Very few statesmen exist. Our leaders that can steer us in a right direction politically, socially or spiritually. Now in my mature years, I can compare what was to what now is. Young people only know what presently exists. For the past 30 years, the progress to our modern era has been rapid. We have lost an enormous amount of our national and individual freedom, nationally to one worldism, and individually to the state, and to political correctness, which only amounts to political censorship. Regardless of the complaint of this trend, it continues, it seems, unabated. Who actually is promoting it? Who determines what political correctness is? And who implements it? We live in a very permissive society. There's no morals anymore. When I was growing up, there was always the church in the background. As a family, we weren't generally church goers, but a respect existed, and there was the need to be christened, confirmed, and married in one. The church in all its denominational forms was the conscience of society. It played a role in direction and guidance. Without being overburdened, perhaps like in some European countries, it had a good influence in Australia. 90% of the population, when I was growing up in the 1950s and 60s, would describe themselves as Christian, even though many were nominal. Today, testified by the last census, it had been dropped to 50%. The church has seen a rapid demise over the last 4 decades. It has lost its influence, and to some degree it is its own fault. Many churches have become social institutions and taking up what we call liberation theology, which may give some political satisfaction but little spiritual satisfaction, which people look to the church to receive. In the 1960s came the philosophy, "There are no absolutes," which was chanted from the universities and liberal academics. This radical thought gained acceptance and is now taken for granted that we all believe in it. The fact of the matter is, if there are no absolutes and there can be no truths or certainties, in essence, anything goes. And this is where we are at the moment. There should be credible and sure guidance for society, or for that matter for the individual. Now the motto is, let it all hang out, babe. In our past society, in the Western world, it was Christianity with its 10 Commandments and the Gospel of the Christ, which guided us and with all its faults served us generally well. For overseas society, it was Buddhism, Mohammedanism, Confucianism, Judaism, or whatever, that served them, and it shaped their society as Christianity did ours. What was suited for one may not have been suited for another. 1917 saw the rise of communism, which became the new religion for many societies, even in Europe. A brutal, cold and nasty philosophy, where the person was an instrument of the state and the woe betide anyone who got in the way. The brief reign of Nazism was much the same, both, I should hastily add, based in socialism. There are very serious signs which we must take into account in the present world of ours. It is not only the dreadful debt situation, but the breakdown of the family, the confusing roles now of male and female, the emerged dominance of big corporations, and the overwhelming influence of the government and the social manipulation of the individual. What was called wrong in the past is now right, and socialistic terms, even within so-called conservative societies, have become dominant. So what can we do? That's the difficult question to answer. It's no use waiting for a leader to come along to lead us. That may or may not happen. We can take up the mantle ourselves. By that, we as a people must retain our principles and our ethics and not waver from them. It is true that we have to live in the broad society. We have to survive, socialise, have a job, get an education, the latter which has slipped off the rails so badly that in my opinion education is just a brainwashing institution forcing the young what to think rather than how to think. We can, however, be true to ourselves, setting an example of stability and principle in a society with its numerous social problems, much of it drug-related, and standing by our morality and beliefs based on proven successes. Nothing is imperfect in this imperfect world. Nothing is permanent. All we can do is to live up to high standards which we believe are workable for the betterment of society. We will fail on many occasions, as we as individuals are too not perfect. But unless we try, what hope is there? One thing we must work for is the getting rid of Section 18C from the federal legislation and Section 17 here in Tasmania. By doing so, will be a giant step towards regaining our freedom of expression. Our political representatives should be there protecting our freedom rather than taking them away. Defending and promoting those past and proven workable beliefs and institutions must be our goal, and by living as an individual according to those things which we hold so dear. Thank you for listening.